My name is Colin Heacock, and you're listening to Pro Lacrosse Talk.
On Schreiber.
Sidearm whip, scores!
Now in front, Fennell scores! Paul Rabel splits two and scores!
Kylie O'Miller showing off those shifty skills.
Kelly, not shy, bounces one home! What a start!
Welcome to Pro Lacrosse Talk podcast. I'm Hutton, he's Adam. Together we have all the latest news from all your favorite professional lacrosse leagues. Happy to have you guys for another episode of Pro Lacrosse Talk. I'm coming to you from New Jersey while Adam is at the beach in Ocean City. Adam, how's the beach treating you today?
Not too bad. It's about 90 degrees and sunny out, so I'm calm and enjoying myself. So I'm ready to talk some lacrosse. We had a lot of good stuff this past week.
Yep, awesome. We're going to talk about the WPLL Championship weekend, return of the PLL regular season, and break down the MLL All-Star Game for you guys as well. But let's dive into our fast break first. Adam, why don't you take it away?
Start with the PLL. First game of last weekend, the Atlas upset the Redwoods 18-15 to stay in the playoff hunt. The Chaos defeated the Whipsnakes 13-12 to avenge their Week 1 loss. And the Archers won against the Chrome 9-7 in a big one to keep them in the playoff hunt. To the MLL, Lyle Thompson's Team Ice defeated Rob Pinnell's Team Fire in the MLL All-Star Game 16-15 in overtime on a Brendan Sunday goal. WPLL, the Fight defeated the Command 13-10 in the semifinal Game 1. The Brave defeated the Pride 15-10 in Game 2. And in the WPLL Championship, the Brave defeated the formerly undefeated Fight 13-12 to win the championship.
Awesome. A lot of great games this weekend, and you actually did really well in the game picks. We'll discuss that a little bit later, but you're kind of making up some ground in our competition. But let's go to the quick stick, some NLL news. Following his 14-year career, Brad Self has retired and will join the Colorado Mammoth front office as assistant GM. The Buffalo Bandits signed Matt Vink to a 3-year extension. In the MLL, they announced the All-Star Game attendance was 6,685 in Annapolis, so a pretty good turnout for them. The PLO announced their Denver attendance was 12,892 for the 3 games. And in the biggest news of the week, Paul Rabel loses his endorsement deal with New Balance and Warrior. So let's actually talk about that a little bit. A Bloomberg article came out saying that the reason why was that he was, shown wearing an Adidas lacrosse penny. And he wears his Adidas jersey in a game, so that was kind of the grounds that New Balance used for ending his endorsement, which a lot of people had a problem with. Obviously, a lot of comparisons were drawn to leagues like the NBA and the NFL, where players, have these endorsement deals with brands, but they wear these league-mandated, Nike jerseys or Adidas jerseys. So there's a lot of people drawing comparisons to that, saying it was kind of hypocritical for New Balance to drop him. But I want people to keep in mind, this is a Bloomberg article that was released, 7 a.m. in the morning. They didn't have any of the New Balance members comment on it. It was clearly, like the PLL had this ready to go when this news was ready to break. So they definitely have their slant on it. We haven't really heard New Balance Warrior's story. We don't know if there was more in his contract. We don't know the details of his contract. What was your gut reaction to this move by New Balance?
It's unfortunate, but I kind of saw it coming, to be honest with you. I mean, if you look at, we'll talk about the MLL All-Star Game coming up. New Balance is all over their gear, not only in the All-Star Game, but in the regular season as well. And it's kind of a clash of the two leagues, like everything else that's happening. And it only made sense for them to kind of come out and decide this. After I read the article, I kind of wasn't surprised what New Balance did with kind of breaking ties with him, and then as we found out later, Scotty Rogers as well. New Balance is one of the main sponsors for the MLL, and obviously Paul created a new league and is kind of going against that. So I wasn't surprised that this kind of came to fruition now. Interesting timing to drop this kind of news, but it didn't surprise me.
And I think it goes back to the timing was probably because the PLL is in a bye. I don't think this is actually new news to them. I think they were, waiting to release this at the right time, and I think they did it at a good time, as a PR move for them. But I think the biggest issue here is, Jim Davis, the owner of New Balance and Warrior, once owned 4 teams in the MLL. Now he only owns the Rattlers, but he has a large stake. New Balance requires their players to only wear New Balance stuff, and if they have endorsement deals with other brands, they have to cover that up. Which I think that's the real issue here. I really like that Paul and Mike Rabel are doing, they're allowing these players to, be endorsed by different brands, and wear the different helmets, wear the different gloves. Like it's, they have their Adidas league-wide sponsorship, but they're not tying these guys down, and I think that's the important thing here. But this definitely was due in part to the personal beef with Paul. They made the decision, based on what they say is a contract breach. We don't know the details. We can't really speculate on that. But bottom line is people are knocking New Balance for this. And, and the way they did it probably wasn't the right way to go about it. But really, they didn't have an option with push comes to shove. Do you really want a guy on your payroll who started his own league that's a competing league against yours? I don't think so. So they really didn't have an option. Unfortunately, it's bad press for them. But at the end of the day, it was the business decision that I think they had to be made. They didn't really have a way out of it. So unfortunate for Paul, but I'm sure he'll do fine. I'm sure Adidas is ready to pick him up, or even maybe a Maverick or STX is waiting in the wings as well.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, me too. But going off of that, let's talk about the WPLL Championship. A great weekend for women's lacrosse. I don't think we could have asked for better 3 games this weekend. You actually had a sellout crowd at the semifinals for Yale. They had their WPLL Futures, which is when they have the youth players come out, and they did a little clinic. So I think that really helped the turnout. But yeah, great day for lacrosse. And let's talk about this fight and command game first. I mean, it was back and forth. The fight looked like they were going to kind of run away with it. But the command, showed their resolve, and they never really backed down. I mean, they had a different goal scorer on every goal that they scored. But, unfortunately, the fight did come away with the victory, in large part, to the duo of Kylie Ohlmiller and Taylor Cummings. We talked about the fight's offense all year, and, they just have so many weapons. And you had, Kayla Trainer and Katrina Dowd at the end kind of securing the victory for the fight. But, a great game. I thought at one point the command were going to, come back. Bianco kind of kept them in there in cage, with 9 saves. So, overall, a great game, and the fight ended up advancing to championship on Sunday. But let's talk about the game that followed, the Brave versus the Pride. What did you see from this game, Adam?
Yeah, this was a big one. The Brave got out to an early lead, and it was a flurry of goals in that first quarter. It was 10-3 Brave going into the second quarter, and things kind of evened out a little bit after that. But really strong outburst from the Braves offense. Like we said, you got this one right. I was expecting the Pride's offense to come out with a little bit more fire, but unfortunately it wasn't the case. Liz Hogan for the Pride came up big in cage with 8 saves, some really big highlight reel saves in the second half, but it was just not enough, unfortunately, with how big the Braves lead was. Marie McCool at the draw control X was absolutely dominant, winning 11 of 17 draws, which helped to propel the Brave to that championship. And the offense, from a goal standpoint, was pretty even. Courtney Fortunato, Dana Doby had 2, Amanda Johansson, who we'll talk about in a little, had 2 goals as well. So really strong offensive output from the Brave, who were able to move on to the championship game.
Yeah, no, I think it just showed how, dominant the Brave team could be. And I think, we talked about the fight so much this season that we kind of overlooked them a little bit. They were leading 13-5 at one point. So kudos to the Pride for, working their way back into the game. Only lost 15-10, but the Brave rolled on to the championship, and we could not have asked for a better championship, Adam. I mean, it was on ESPNU, so I love that it was televised because it was back and forth. Kayla Trainer, 7 goals on the day. And they were some great goals. She had a nice backhanded goal coming from behind X. She had a behind-the-back snipe that landed her on SportsCenter's top 10. She was just having a day. So kudos to the Syracuse product. But again, the Brave, they just hung around, and they were losing at one point 12-9 with 9:45 left in the fourth quarter. It looked like the fight were just going to, kind of hold on to this victory, and they came roaring back. They scored 4 straight to give them the 13-12 win, in large part to Dempsey Arsenault, who was named MVP. And you talked about Amanda Johansson. She won 5 draws, had a caused turnover, and scored 4 goals. We're going to actually have her on our podcast next week. So shout out to the Brave. They get it done. Last year they fell short in the championship to the command, and they come away with the victory.
The fight are going to leave this one with a bad taste in their mouth after having a 3-goal lead going into the last 12 minutes of this one. So they're my early on favorite for next year, even though the Pride were able to, even though the Brave were able to pull this one out. I'm still sticking with the fight for next year. But this was an awesome game, fantastic all around, and this is why we've been promoting the women's game all year. These are the types of games we want the professional lacrosse community to see. It's an awesome product, and it just needs to be seen by more people, and I think it's on the way to getting there.
No, absolutely. And, we talk about the PLL having, so many great players that, some of these guys get left off the roster. I mean, look at these WPL teams. There's only 5 of them, and you have, the world's best only distributed to 5 teams. So, everyone on those teams can play. I don't even, if they eventually expand, I don't think you'll see teams as great as this, because you just, like I said, we go back to the command game. They had 11 different goal scorers. These women are phenomenal lacrosse players. You're getting the best of the best. It's giving some of the older players like Katrina Dowd a chance to, be in the spotlight. And then, some younger ones like Dempsey Arsenault and Kylie Ohlmiller to, kind of take the torch. And, seeing them all play together, Kylie told us a lot how she was a big fan of Katrina Dowd, growing up, and now she gets to play with her. So I think that's, the biggest takeaway from this WPLL season, and we look forward to more WPLL action next year.
Yeah, and one thing to denote, kind of going into the off season, I'll be curious what that really looks like for the WPLL. We don't really have any word on what free agency looks like for them going from season 1 to season 2. Most of the rosters were pretty intact compared to last year. So other than the additions of rookies and some players who decided to play again. So I'll be intrigued to see how things go when it comes to the off season for them, whether these teams are kind of intact going forward or whether we do see some shakeups in rosters.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now let's discuss some of these PLL games, Adam. We had the All-Star Game last week. We have the return of the regular season this week, and then we're actually headed into the bye weekend. But some great games this weekend. I mean, it's hard to say some great games every weekend because every game you get from the PLL is good. But this Redwoods Atlas game actually looked like it could have been a blowout at first. Tell me a little bit about what you saw from that game.
This was the type of performance we were kind of hoping for the Atlas to pull out, kind of coming out of the All-Star break, for them to be able to stay in the playoff hunt. They jumped out to a quick lead off of a hat trick from Connor Busick, and they were up 5 goals, had an early 5-goal lead. Solid ball movement from this. This is the type of offense we are expecting them to do from a bunch of savvy vets and professionals when it came to their offense. With their losses this year, they haven't been moving the ball, but this game, they were moving it tight and crisp passes all around and had a well-balanced offense too, which was something that we were looking for. That attack line of Eric Law, Keenan McCardle, and Ryan Brown had a fantastic day. Eric Law had 5 points, Kieran McCardle had 4, and Ryan Brown had 2 on the day. So well-balanced offense. Like you said, it was closer than we were expecting early on, as the Redwoods did come back, and after that first half, they outscored the Atlas 6-4 in the third quarter. But the Atlas defense was able to hold tight, even though letting up for 3 goals in the fourth quarter to get this victory, 18-15, to kind of keep them in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, no, I think, the story of the day for the Redwoods was the dud that they had on defense, giving up 18 goals. Troutner just didn't look like he was himself this game. But, you have to credit the resolve. Again, Jules Henningberg, I got to speak to him this week, and, he'll be on our podcast next week. He just isn't fazed by anything. He ended up, scoring 6 goals. Kind of led to their resurgence in the third quarter, and kind of put them back in this game. But yeah, it's tough when you go down 9-2 to kind of come back. Yeah. We like to say there's no safe leads in lacrosse, and especially the Premier Lacrosse League, and that was evident by their comeback. But kudos to the Atlas for getting it done and maintaining that lead. Like you mentioned, Eric Law had a big day in his return to Denver. I think this was just a bad day for the Redwoods on defense. They played well all season. For them to, lay an egg in this one, I think is better than, later down the stretch when they're in the playoff hunt. So I think it's tough for them to sit at 4-3. They obviously wanted to be 5-2 right at the top of the standings, but I don't think this will hurt them too much going forward.
This was definitely a big one for the Atlas, and this will be something that they probably utilize to propel themselves for their hopes for playoff contention.
But speaking of the top of the standings, we had the two top teams, Whip Snakes versus Chaos. Whips had a playoff spot on the line. And this was another great back and forth game. I mean, this game was so tightly contested. 39 shots by the Chaos to the Whip Snakes 43. 31 ground balls by the Chaos to the Whip Snakes 27. Face-off wins, you had 13 for Tommy Kelly and 15 for Joe Nardella. And then the saves, Reardon and Bernlor were even at 12. We couldn't have asked for a closer game. This might have been a championship preview, honestly, and a first-round preview if they both end up at 1-2. Jared Newman coming out again with a big 2-point goal. The Premier Lacrosse League Twitter tweeted out the only guarantees in life are death taxes and 2-point bombs from Jared Newman. I thought that was kind of funny because it's so true, because the man has 4 2-point goals on the season, and I don't know why people don't slide earlier to him. I mean, it's not that these shots aren't uncontested, but I mean, just slide to him early. If he has the ball 17, 18 yards out, I don't care if you're sliding upfield. You got to cover this guy because he's just letting them rip. That's been the beauty of the shorter field and having a 15-yard 2-point arc. So great game by them. It was back and forth, and Deemer Class came up big for the Chaos at the end of the game, scoring 2 goals, and including the game winner, to make it 13-12 with around 2 minutes left to play. So overall, a great game. What did you see from it, Adam?
Another back and forth contest with great play. Ryan Trenner, he came up big with 4 goals in this one. I think a big turning point was honestly that Matt Rambo goal that was called off after the Andy Towers coaching challenge. So I think that was a big turning point in this one. You talked about Blaze Reardon a little bit already, but Kyle Bernlohr had another strong game, both coming up with 12 saves. So these two teams are evenly matched, whether it's in cage, at the face-off X. The Whips had a slight advantage when it came to that statistic, but pretty much even everywhere, and it only made sense that it came down to 1 goal.
Adam, I think it was a great game, and like I said, I think this could be a preview of what we see in the number 1, number 2 seed game in the playoffs, and maybe even the championship. But going off of that, let's go to the bottom of the standings with the Archers Chrome, both trying to fight for their playoff lives here. The Chrome really needed this win. If they got a win here, they kind of would have been right back into the hunt. Unfortunately, they couldn't get it done. We were tied 5-5 at the end of the first half. It looked like the Archers were going to take a 5-4 lead going into the half. Connor Farrell won the face-off real quick. A quick tic-tac goal to Jordan McIntosh, who buried one to tie it up with less than a second left. Kind of giving the Chrome some momentum going into the second half. But it was the duo in cage of Adam Gittleman and Drew Adams that got it done, because they held this Chrome team, who had scored 19 points previously, to just 7, and including Drew Adams, who held them to only 2 in the second half. I mean, talk about a defensive effort. The Chrome kind of led in all the statistical categories. They had 54 shots to the Archers 40. They dominated the ground ball game, having 35 as opposed to the Archers 25. Face-offs were pretty even. Chrome won 9 to the Archers 7. But the biggest category here that stood out was the 19 saves by the Adam Gittleman and Drew Adams duo. And, that's really where they got it done. So it was nice to see the Archers back in the win column. Their big guys in Will Manny and Marcus Holman, who had, 2 2-point goals. And, of course, Tom Schreiber, they came to play. But I still think there's some issues here for this Archers team. I think, if it wasn't for the phenomenal goalie play, they could have been on the losing side of this one. So they're definitely going to need to get more offensive production from some of these other guys. It was nice to see Cuccinello out there. He had 2 goals on the day, but definitely not on the Archers train yet in terms of making a solid playoff run. They're in the 4th spot right now, but I don't know. How did you feel about this team right now, Adam?
I don't think much has changed, to be quite honest with you. Like you said, they're up and down, and when they're on, they can be one of the top teams in the league, and when they're off, it just doesn't look right. So I don't think my opinion has changed. I'm nervous, just like you are, for them at this point in the season, and who knows? Maybe this goalie play will kind of change things for them. And we haven't really seen a super successful squad in the past for professional lacrosse system. I think there were a couple times in the MLL where this was something that they use, and we'll see if it sticks like this. If a goalie, if Drew Adams or Gittleman are starting and are having an absolute awesome first half, are they going to switch goalies? So it looks like they are right now, but we'll see what happens with them in cage going forward. But that's just another question, right? I think the thing with the Archers is we have a lot of questions whether they're going to come to play on the offensive side of the ball or are going to be able to put it together at least. So my opinion really hasn't changed after this, and I'm curious to see what they do going forward.
Yeah, no, definitely, and no small task up ahead for them after the bye. They face the Atlas. So this might be, the deciding factor of who ends up making the playoffs and getting that fourth seed.
Big one.
So definitely the biggest game, I think, coming up after the bye week in San Jose. But let's get into our MLL All-Star Game discussion. Before we get into that, though, I want to share some post-game sound we got. Our videographer, Tom Walton, was down in Annapolis this past weekend doing some video content for us on the All-Star Game. After the game, he got to speak to Colin Heacock, who's with the Bayhawks and played for Team Ice in the All-Star Game.
Playing from the hometown crowd, it's, obviously we have a lot of support from them, and just being able to bring back some of the best, players in the league and in the world, it's a huge honor, and, all the little kids were out there, cheering, and it was just an awesome atmosphere. Yeah, I think every single game, it's a new learning experience for us. We're still building that chemistry, but I think we've come a long way. Obviously, we have a lot of room for improvement, but we're just continuing to get better each and every day, every practice, and it's going to be an exciting future. It was good fun, playing against a bunch of these guys. Obviously, we spent the whole day with each other yesterday, so we're kind of building those little relationships on the side, a little trash talk here and there, but at the end of the day, it's all for fun, and we're all out there just having a good time.
So you just heard Colin Heacock. Obviously, he had a great time at the All-Star Game. It was a great event. They had a great turnout of over 6,000 fans there. Let's dive into this All-Star Game, Adam. It was a great game. Ended up going to overtime. Team Ice coming out on top, 16-15. They extinguished the fire. Dylan Malloy was named the MVP. He said that he told his mom that he'll donate the 10,000 winnings to St. Jude Children's Hospital, which I think is great. Overall, a great game with some cool highlights. Mark Hockerton had a nice behind-the-back goal. Of course, Lyle Thompson was all over the field. Colin Heacock had a goal himself. And then Brendan Sunday, off a feed from Lyle Thompson, had the game winner from his knees. So overall, you couldn't have asked for a better game. The one thing that really kind of bothered me was watching it on TV is just the broadcast just wasn't great. You had this random red line where the 2-point line arc was that was completely unnecessary because you had the line on the field. I don't know why the broadcast decided to put it on there. It was way too thick to begin with, and it was also unnecessary. It's funny because the Annapolis Stadium is the only field I believe that really has just the MLL lines on it, whereas some of these fields have multiple lines on the field, so there it would have made sense. But that was one issue that to me kind of took away from the game. Overall the game itself was great. You had a lot of great goals from the big stars like Rob Pennell and John Grant Jr., and of course, like we mentioned, Dylan Malloy. But I don't know, that's the one thing that, if the MLL wants to keep up, they really need to get right is fixing the broadcast.
Yeah, it was a great game. It's fun to watch. Interesting to me that Dylan Malloy was the MVP of the losing squad. He had a fantastic game. It just seemed ironic to me that he got the MVP after he decided to leave the PLL and stick with the MLL, which I thought was kind of funny. So that was kind of something that stuck in my mind. I loved seeing two of the best players in the world, Lyle Thompson and John Grant Jr., play on the same squad together. Two of the most stylistically unique players to watch together was something really fun to see. And it was just a great game overall. What did you think about the uniforms? I thought I liked the helmets. The uniforms I could have done without. I thought they could have been a little bit cooler. But what were your thoughts on the unis?
I actually like the uniforms a lot. Obviously, I gave my opinion on the PLO uniforms. I like these uniforms a lot. I really thought the color scheme was cool. I think it was a missed opportunity, though, to have the fire in white and the ice in black. I don't know why they didn't, kind of switch those roles, maybe have the fire in like an all red uniform and then, the ice in like an icy light blue and white. That kind of was one thing I thought was maybe a missed opportunity, but I really enjoyed them. I thought the helmets were really cool, going with like the chrome finish. So yeah, I didn't have too many complaints. So I guess, you preferred the PLL All-Star uniforms. I preferred the MLL ones, but, I think overall both jerseys were pretty cool. But going off of that, let's dive into our game picks. Adam, you're now sitting at 20-18. You had a big run. You predicted all the PLL games correctly. And you also had the winner for the MLL All-Star Game, which really helped you. So you're at 20-18. I'm sitting at 23-15, so I'm still, got a bit of a lead on you, but it's getting pretty close here as we head into the second half of the summer. But Adam, who are you picking between the Cannons against the Outlaws at 6 p.m. on Saturday?
Man, this is one that I was curious to watch and kind of start on the weekend. Both teams coming off of kind of ugly losses right before the All-Star break. The Outlaws playing not great against the Rattlers when the Rats got their first victory of the season. And then the Boston Cannons lost to the Blaze that last game 15-12, and their offense just wasn't clicking. So this is a big game for both of those squads who are on the top of the standings right now, but just did not play well. So based off of those games, I'm going to pick the Outlaws. I just can't see them playing anywhere near as bad as they did. I think that previous game was one to say, burn that tape, dig it in a hole, and never speak of it again, and come out really strong for the second half run. So I'm going to pick the Outlaws in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go Outlaws as well. I think it'll be interesting to see how these teams go up against each other. The last time we got into a little scuffle between these teams. Zach Kerr had some choice words for the Cannons after the game. Yeah, I think the Outlaws, they grinded out. I think they've shown that they could play well together down the stretch, more than the Cannons. Not that the Cannons, have been bad, but I think the Cannons defense isn't prepared for this Outlaws offense, and I think it'll be another high-scoring affair in Denver. So then our next game following that at 8 p.m., we have two games. The first we'll discuss is the Dallas Rattlers versus the Atlanta Blaze. You think the Rattlers are going to get their second win of the season?
I don't think it's going to happen. I think previous to the break, everything worked in their favor. Their goalie was hitting on all cylinders, and the Outlaws were not. So I don't see another team playing that bad against them. I think the Blaze are looking to make some noise in the second half, and I think they're going to pull this one out. I don't think, unfortunately, the Rats are going to get that second W.
I'm going to go upset alert here. I think the Rattlers are going to pull one out against the Blaze just for the fact that the Blaze tend to lay these eggs on defense, and they get into these back and forth high-scoring games. So I think you're going to see a Rattlers team kind of hang around till the end and maybe come away with this victory. So I'm going to pick the Rattlers in this one.
Getting closer to the standings every time to you, brother.
We'll see. And then another rivalry game coming up at 8 in Annapolis. You have the Lizards against the Bayhawks. These teams don't like each other. It's one of the oldest rivalries in the MLL. Who are you picking in this one, Adam?
I'm going to have to go with the home team in this one. I'm going with the Bayhawks. I know this is a big one after the Lizards pulled out the victory right before the All-Star break. But this is something we talked about right before. I brought up this will be game 2 of a 3-game series, as I'm calling it, against the Lizards. So I'm going to pick the Bayhawks at this one at home in Annapolis. But I'm curious what will happen for game 2, which is on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the Lizards. I think they're kind of figuring it out on offense, and their defense with goalie Austin Cow has kind of figured it out as well. So I think they're going to pull out another close one. It is interesting to see. I think they're going to probably split this series, but I'll pick the Lizards in game 1. And going off of that, then Adam, are you sticking with the Bayhawks for game 2 on Sunday, or are you going to mix it up and go with the Lizards?
I'm going to stick with the Bayhawks, I think, in this one for them to get those 2 decisive victories on the weekend. Both teams have to travel. I know the Lizards are considered home, and they are, but both teams are going to be on short rest going into game 2, and it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Definitely. I'm going to end up picking the Bayhawks in this one just because I feel like they've done a little bit better on the road. Which is kind of ironic, because they have one of the better home crowds in Annapolis.
Man, the scheduling for this is so tough for teams to have to play another game in less than 24 hours. I don't know what your thoughts are, and clearly this has to do with the reshuffling of the schedule after they decided to disband those 3 squads. But man, it's tough to have to play 2 brutal games back to back in less than 24 hours.
It sucks, man. I get why it had to be this way because of the folding of 3 teams. But I don't understand how they couldn't have reshuffled some of these games I get they were 2 months away from the start of the season, but this is just, it's brutal for these players, to just play 2 games on a weekend in general. I don't even think, the Thursday game and then Saturday game is that beneficial to these players either. So I definitely think they need to figure it out next year, whether that's, shortening the schedule a little bit or, just making these games more spread out. I mean, the season goes until October, so it's kind of hard to kind of extend the season any longer. But, I think maybe it's just less games on these players. Obviously that would mean less ticket sales, so I don't know if they're going to end up going that route. But, overall, no one wants to see 2 beat-up squads play each other back-to-back days, especially in 2 different locations. So definitely something they need to fix next year. Going off of that wraps up our podcast. Another great episode with you, Adam. This is episode 11. It's hard to believe that we've already done 11 episodes, having just started this over 2 months ago. Just want to remind you guys to go ahead and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review. We'll have Jules Henningberg next week join us. I sat down in person with Jules in Jersey to discuss his career so far and, what the Redwoods standouts' hopes for the future are. So a great interview with him. Hope you guys can listen to that next week. But Adam, let's go into overtime. What are you looking forward to most this weekend?
I think I'm going to have to go with some of the MLL games this week. I mean, it's the lacrosse that's going to be on, and I'm really excited to see how this first game, I know we talked about 2 teams coming off of tough losses before the All-Star break. I'm excited to see if Denver or Boston's able to pull this one in. Obviously, I picked Denver, but I'm excited to see if both of these teams can come to play in Colorado.
Yeah, no, and of course the MLL, like you said, is the only games on this weekend. So that's kind of what's intriguing to me the most is, can they really, take it from a branding, marketing standpoint and kind of, own the weekend with that being the only professional lacrosse on this weekend now that the WPLL season has ended and the PLL is in their bye week. So definitely a good opportunity for the MLL to, kind of take control of the social media surrounding lacrosse this weekend. Let's see, we'll see if they actually do that. But that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
And I know it's not all field related, but NLL free agency has started to heat up. So get your Twitter ready and check out the feed to see where some of the big names in the NLL are going to head for next season.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're really looking forward to the NLL college draft coming up and, the start of the NLL season. It's going to be right after the end of the field lacrosse season. So it's exciting to have lacrosse on pretty much all year round. So yeah, definitely another thing that we're both excited about. But that wraps up episode 11. Thank you guys for listening, and we hope you tune in next time to Pro Lacrosse Talk.